Russel Norman.
Talofa lava, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance and asks, does he agree with Secretary to the Treasury John Whitehead's comments that the government should remove overseas investment screening for all but the most sensitive of items? If not, why not?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, the government has been looking at the Overseas Investment Act to see if it contains the right balance between the protection of New Zealanders' vital interests, both economic and landscape, with the processes, whether the processes are as cheap and effective as they should be. Screening needs to recognise that New Zealand needs some overseas capital. We have billions of dollars of it here now, so we can get access to skills and technology and investment for new jobs, but also need to recognise public concerns about those situations where the benefits of overseas investment do not outweigh the costs.
Dr. Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is he aware that the National Business Review has reported that Andrew Peterson of Bell Gully is working on behalf of overseas investors attempting to buy Crayford Farms? If so, does he have any concerns, should that be the same Andrew Peterson of Bell Gully that is advising the government on rewriting overseas investment rules?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's possible. I haven't seen that publication or checked the facts. We did follow, I think, the common sense course of asking those people who use the Act a lot what could be done to improve it. Ultimately, it is Cabinet, though, that will make any decisions about any change in our overseas investment rules. In the meantime, the screening process remains very thorough and consistent with the Overseas Investment Act changes that were made under the previous government.
Dr. Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Was Andrew Peterson of Bell Gully present when the Finance Minister met the advisory group of corporate lawyers to discuss rewriting our overseas investment rules on the 18th of February this year?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, it's possible that he was. I'd have to say lawyers tend to all look the same if you meet them in a room, and I couldn't guarantee whether it was him or not.
Dr. Russel Norman.
Mr. Speaker, does he stand by his answer then to written question number 7033?
Order. I apologise to the member. If you'd start the question again, I couldn't hear it because of interjection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Minister stand by his answer to written question 7033 from 30th of April this year, where he said he had not met with any lawyers acting for natural dairy, such as possibly the same Andrew Peterson from Bell Gully? And why is he refusing to release any information under the Official Information Act about his meeting on the 18th of February with the corporate lawyers advising the government on changing the rules on foreign investment?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we're getting into speculative territory here. My guess is that whoever attended that meeting were unlikely. Whoever they were acting for, I have absolutely no knowledge. It's unlikely they were acting for natural dairies, who I understand have shown up only in the last couple of months in New Zealand. But I'm quite happy to deal with any questions that the member has there. With respect to the other issues, the government is still considering its policy changes.
Te ora flavel.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker, talofa lava. To the Minister, does he agree with Landcorp Chair Jim Sutton that the proposal from the China Jinhu Mining Corporation, recently renamed Natural Dairy New Zealand Holdings, to buy the 16 dairy farms formerly owned by the Crayford family included, quote, reputational risks to the New Zealand dairy industry and New Zealand Incorporated, quote, and if so, what will be done to respond to these risks?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, any apparent risks around this particular purchase will be dealt with thoroughly by the existing processes of the Overseas Investment Office and the Overseas Investment Act.
Te ora flavel.
The Minister, is he aware that one of the Crayford farms is part of the Marairoa A and B blocks over which Ngāti Rereahu has a settlement interest? And what processes of due diligence are followed to ensure that iwi are fully informed and involved before any deals are approved by the Overseas Investment Office?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, it's my understanding that the Overseas Investment Office goes through exactly a set of due diligence processes to ensure that all treaty interests and claims are taken into account before any approval can be given.
Point of order, Dr Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I seek leave to table the Official Information Act answer from the Minister of Finance about the February meeting of the Working Group on Overseas Investment and the absence of much
Leave
information.
it sought to table that document. Is there any objection? There is no objection. The Honourable David Parker, supplementary.
Does the Minister agree that infrastructure assets with monopoly or oligopoly characteristics ought not to be sold to overseas interests?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, I can understand that people may get concerned about overseas purchase of those assets, although I would note that on his watch the previous government approved, and it may even have been the member himself, the purchase of the Wellington Lines Network, electricity lines network, by an overseas buyer.
Question on supplementary, the Honourable David.
Is the Minister aware that controls on the purchase of land by overseas interests have been tightened recently in Australia, and does his government intend to follow suit?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, I understand those measures were taken with respect to the purchase of residential housing. The government hasn't seen any particular problem in that respect in New Zealand.
Question number 9, the Honourable Marion Street.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.